Oh, nice. I was gonna get myself into trouble. I don't know if we're really going to get a whole bunch of other people coming in, and I also don't know if the video just starts automatically, or is that going to get someone's going to start it? Okay, it's under control. Okay, video machine. Yeah, nice. What's that? Okay, so we could just start. Come up back here, Langdon. Okay, we're going to start 2 minutes early because that's how we do things here, and it's all going to be kind of informal. There are slides from the last talk up there or whatever. That's the way we're going to do this. So this is the new Fedora Council, our new top-level leadership and governance body in Fedora. Almost all of what we have to date, except for Christoph Wickert, has the FOSDEM plague, so he could not make it, unfortunately. And I guess there will not really be any formal plan here. I'm going to pass the mic, and we will all introduce ourselves and say what we're doing here and why, and then we will take heckling from the audience for the remainder of the time, I guess. And so I'm Matthew Miller. I am the Fedora project leader, and so basically everything is my fault, and then I'll try and unconfuse it as best as possible. That's my basic mission. And I'll just hand on the mic.
Okay, hi, I'm Jaroslav Řezník. I'm the current Fedora program manager. My favorite color is orange, to answer that question. And my favorite distribution is Fedora, of course. And yeah, I'm the guy who stands behind, so you can. The funny thing was, at FOSDEM I met one friend, and he said, "Okay, you are everywhere. In every conference I am." But week ago we had, the meeting, very internal meeting of Wikimedia. There was a guy sitting with his netbook, and all emails on his list, on his list, there's your name there. So I'm probably everywhere. You see my spam from change announcements. So that's one part of the job, and schedule and stuff like that. So you probably know me.
Hello, I'm Rex Dieter. In the history of the Fedora project, I've been on the board a few times already. I worked a lot in the Fedora packaging committee in the past. Work a lot in the KDE special interest group. That's most of it. Oh, and let's go with red. It's my favorite color.
What's your agenda?
My agenda.
Secret agenda.
Well, then it won't be secret.
Awesome.
Let's make things awesome.
Hi, I'm Josh Boyer. I am the engineering representative on the council, which means I have the easiest job because it's really just kind of taking something that's existed for forever and being the one person that gets to talk to the council about it. I don't have a favorite color, really. And Rex's secret agenda is to get KDE to replace the workstation.
Hi, I'm Stephen Gallagher. I've been working on the Fedora.next project for a while, and recently I was selected to join the council as the coordinator for the long-term project of continuing the 3-edition split. I serve directly on the Fedora server working group, but my main agenda for the next 18 months or so is to work out all of the remaining problems inherent in separating out these 3 targeted releases, also working a little bit on figuring out where exactly the spins fit in and promoting them correctly. So that's pretty much my secret plan. Well, my long-term goal is to see Fedora, a chicken in every pot, a Fedora in every building.
I'm Langdon White. I come from a long background in software development, primarily. I did spend about 9 months playing a sysadmin on TV, and realized how awful I truly am at it. I guess my agenda is, I think the future of operating systems is incredibly interesting right now, because it's getting blown up. And I would like to be involved in that and make sure that, you know, the future of that looks like what I hope the future looks like. I think that's kind of the bulk of it. I think my other incredibly not secret agenda is that I would like a strong operating system that is focused on developers, as a, you know, like I said, not so secret. And I just think there's a lot of really interesting things we can do. So that's kind of why I'm involved.
So I also want to talk a little bit about the empty seats that are not here, literally empty seats. But so we also have a community action and impact, or impact and action lead that is funded by Red Hat's Open Source and Standards group, that will be tasked with basically growing the Fedora user and contributor community in ways that, as the name implies, have high impact. And so we've hired somebody awesome for that role, and he'll be starting later this month. March 2nd? All right, so next month. Okay, so it's Remy DeCosmaker from RIT, who's done a lot of awesome things in the past. So I guess that's the official announcement of it then. So that's going to be really cool. We'll be really happy to work with him. Then another empty seat that I'm going to put together a search committee to look for is a diversity coordinator, or I talked about a diversity advisor, I think is the role. I talked about that this morning a little bit. It's one of the things that I really would like to see improved in open source in general, and I think Fedora is a great place to work on that. We've had the Django girls here at this conference, and that was really awesome. I want to get more of those things happening in Fedora. And yeah, you're right. So we see European white, North American European white males here, and there should be a more reflective of the world panel in the leadership. So craziness, diversity is not sufficient, I think. But and then, additionally, we have the one objective lead for something that's kind of been a clear objective that we've worked on delivering in Fedora 21 and going to go forward. But we also have some space for up to 3 more objective leads for different things we want to do in the project. So we need to figure out what those are and fill them. And so it, yeah. Yes, I do. Right. So the idea with the objective lead is basically that we have this idea of changes in each release, which are kind of based on the upcoming release, and that's sort of a very short-term thing. And we also have a long-term mission for, it basically says world domination for open source with Fedora at the lead of it, which is great, but there's somewhere in between that we haven't done a really good job of filling. So the idea is to have 18-month, approximately 12-month, 18-month targets of this is something that will connect to our end-term goal in this way that needs to be coordinated across the project. Something, and we haven't quite figured out exactly what size of things fit into that, so that's part of the exploratory process here. So I think proposals for those kind of things would be a great start, and then we can start to say, oh, that's clearly too big, or that's too small, or we'll try it and see how it comes out. And if you have ideas, send them to the Fedora Council discuss list. I think that's probably the best place to go, and we can start like making those into kind of formal proposals. And you can see the one that I put together for the 3 editions proposal and see what that looks like as kind of a template for what another proposal might look like.
You have excellent ideas. Stop you from bringing them up now.
Yeah, you could shout them out now as well. So also part of the idea is that it should be something that is not just that it takes 18 months, but that over the course of 18 months, it can be something we can see progress in, and we can measure, and we can say, okay, this much got done, this much got done, okay, and we reached our goals with this. And then, maybe we have another continuing thing after that if it's something that's bigger than 18 months. But that's... Okay, any questions? Yes. Okay, yeah, the question is, what is the relationship between the council, the board, FPC, FESCO, all of those kind of things? So I guess, hopefully it will simplify the picture here, but so that there is no more board. The council replaces the board. And then we have two positions. The engineering position basically is the direct conduit from the council to FESCO here. And then we have another one that goes to the outreach side of things. That's Christoph's outreach lead role. So that will goes to marketing, ambassadors, anything that's kind of outward and user facing rather than making the distro facing goes into that side. So I think that it kind of looks a little bit more like an org chart rather than an exploded web than a previous plan of Fedora. I don't know. When was that? Flock. I drew up on the board all of the groups in Fedora that I could think of, and it was a crazy, awesome spider web. And so hopefully it will kind of bring a little bit of clarity to that, and sort of the idea where if you have a big idea for Fedora, where to bring it to, where it should go up from, and where it can go back down, so that we have a more clear direction overall.
Can I just interrupt for a second? I was going to ask, just to request the audience, could someone maybe start a FAQ page based on this meeting? It would be awesome, because where is the link to that piece of information? Where is this mailing list? All those things might be a useful output, and maybe would have been nice on a slide beforehand. Cool. That was all. I'll take the next question, though. Actually, I'll make Josh take it, but... Denise?
So I would actually... Oh, yes. The question was, what is the role of Fedora Packaging Committee when you take into account things like Docker images and probably even Project Atomic and stuff like that? I would love to see an objective around containers, bundled apps, and everything like that, because we really do need to figure it out. It seems in Fedora we have two distinct sets of people, where we have people pushing for Docker containers and containerized apps and things like that. And then the people in the Fedora Packaging Committee are, they kind of freak out. They're like, wait, that doesn't fit in our guidelines. It doesn't fit in our RPM world of things. And I think Langdon, in Matt's talk or somebody's talk earlier today, kind of pointed out that, the world is moving in that direction. And we don't necessarily have to make it perfect, but we do have to accommodate it somewhat. So I think either the Fedora Packaging Committee needs to evolve to take that into account, or they need to step aside and let some other group come in and figure out how are we going to deal with containers. Are we going to have an app store that has containerized apps in it? But yeah, right now the guidelines are very much conflicting with containers, right? Because they're basically bundled apps, and our guidelines basically say no bundled apps without lots of exceptions. So it's... Right. So Kevin's point is, the guidelines are correct. And I'm not saying they're not correct, but it doesn't matter, because if Fedora sticks with our guidelines and says we're only going to allow this, we're not going to allow this other thing that everybody else is already using, nobody will use Fedora. Well, not nobody, but certainly a reduced set of people going forward, right? I mean, I don't have a problem with it, but lots of people do. And so we have to come to some kind of middle ground. I don't believe that there is a perfect in any case. There's a middle ground that has to be met, I think.
My other thing is I firmly believe that they're not correct, but not because of the reasons you would immediately think. I think we need to think about the problem. I think nobody's thought about this problem and how to solve for it in 10 or 15 years, right? The problem of the space, the problem of security updating, and all that kind of stuff that the guidelines are meant to fix. I'm not convinced that that's the only answer, right? That's what I would argue for. So it doesn't mean that they're not correct currently, right? It's just that I think there is some sort of technical exercise that we need to try to see if we can figure out a way to do this, to solve that problem with a different set of methods. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just one moment. One of the things that I think we really want to be trying to address with the edition split is traditionally Fedora has had just one answer. It's RPMs are the solution to all problems and the cause of many. But the fact of the matter is that the needs of a person who is developing a piece of software and the needs of a person who is deploying a piece of software in production are very, very different. The person who's developing a piece of software wants to get the interesting bits of their code up and running as quickly as possible. For them, and in that situation, things like bundling and such are very, very appealing. But a very strong argument can be made, I'm sure Kevin would make it, that when deploying, there are lots of additional concerns that you want to make sure that you maintain that system and that it's not going to fall over because you have a library you can't update and it's got a security issue, or you've got any of these, you're duplicating your memory because you've got 6 copies of zlib loaded as bundled libraries in various places. Those are all really deployment problems, and those need to be solved as well. So we really need to figure out what is the balance there. How do we meet the needs of developers, but then do deployment right?
And is there a difference between deployment? Is there a difference between deployments in server environments versus desktop environments? Sometimes there is a difference, and sometimes there isn't, right? So in an enterprise, a desktop actually looks like a server, right? But my laptop is a mess, right? I think, like I said, I just don't think that we've thought the technical problem through again,
In my world, I would still like to produce a container of as many RPMs as possible. So that being said, my developers, and I am an ISP, so my developers, they want your continuous deployment. They would rather have tools on old servers than modify size over time. So the balance there, and the PHP is coming with Composer. Gem has been around for ages, of course. They tend to want to bend the regs in order to allow them to have their development environment ready to go. So I think as far as containers can solve that is that I can give them both the target platform as well as whatever other platform might be in the future. But we still have to think about how do I make it as easy as possible for developers to do, the test-driven development of the Scrum, be as agile, not bother too much with old versions, pick whatever they want from the web, which are mostly personal GitHub accounts, nobody's accountable, and then bundle all of that into what hopefully will be container or otherwise an RPM. And so there is the crux, I think, that is also the answer to the sysadmin nightmare of home-based libraries.
So I have no idea how to summarize that.
Well, I was going to say, the first thing is he described developers much like myself. I don't often have to debug, but when I do, it's in production. The other summary, right, is basically where it's getting, particularly with the pace of software growing so fast, right? Software development speed is just going blindingly fast compared to even 5 years ago, much less if you look at 15 years ago. Because of that, developers are now even more aggressively having to adopt the newest and greatest thing, right? The trade-off to that, right, is that the evolution, in a sense, of the sysadmin support infrastructure is not moving as quickly, And as a result, now not only is there the constant battle between developers and the ops people, which I think is a good one, which is the balance between the most awesome, cool new thing and the ability to run it in production, right? There's a balance there, and that's a good one. You have the same one with QE, right? I always say kind of ops is usually the slowest moving, right? With QE being the second slowest moving, and developers being the fastest moving. As far as ops is concerned, if there's never an update to an application ever again, that's great, right? QE slightly more relaxed, right? And developers always want to do new stuff. So you kind of take all that together, and now we're separating the space even further, and it gets really, really messy. And so, but we have a lot of new technologies now that may be able to solve this problem differently, right? And we have lesser concerns in a sense, right? Like, relatively speaking, RAM and disk are cheap compared to 15 years ago. So are there trade-offs that we can make that are different than they used to be?
From a developer point of view, there's no more convenient way to install the libraries I need than yum install lib/foo/dev. And even on many systems with a new policy kit and package kit stuff, you can even easily allow the developers to just install the lib/foo/dev packages without root permissions if they are packaged in the repositories.
So can I make two quick comments? One, the develop package thing I think is an important one.
I was just going to summarize. Then you can talk all you want.
No, sorry.
So Kevin said from a development point of view, the development packages that Fedora already provides are the easiest thing. You just yum install whatever devel, and it's there, and you can develop on it. Before I let you talk, I agree. It is very easy, but it's easy if you're developing something to run on Fedora, right? So if you want to do that, that's exactly what you want to do. If you're an application developer that doesn't care what distro you're running on, you either have to have a VM with all the different distros and whatever releases of those distros you want to support and yum install or apt-get or whatever it is on Debian and do that for every single one of them, or you do a container, you bundle your apps, and then you can deploy them everywhere, which is kind of the utopia that I think Docker's aiming for. I don't know if it's there yet or not because I'm a kernel guy and I don't care. But yeah, I mean, it's not that the current development method is wrong or improper. It's just that people want to reach beyond just one distro, and that's what containers are kind of promising. So
it's also a mistake to think that devel packages are particularly useful for about 80% of developers. And the reason is because devel packages are if I want to actually fix a bug in HTTPD, right? For example, they are not the packages, well, in the sense that a devel package doesn't set up HTTPD to be used for a web developer. It sets it up in a production style mode. So then as a developer, because I don't really know how to actually do the security properly, I just turn off SE Linux and I turn off the firewall and everything else because I need to be able to get to the place where I put the files that make the web server run, right? And I don't really know the right way to do it. So this has been, and I'm not saying I know the right answer. I'm just saying that the setup of a devel environment, or the devel packages, is usually so that you can implement the component, right? Versus not then use it. Right. So you can implement that thing, right? Not so that you can use that thing for development.
So a comment from the audience was that a difference to keep in mind is whether or not a person is trying to develop on Fedora or for Fedora. And those are... Right. So another comment from the audience is, first of all, containers may not be perfect for every situation, and don't assume that they are, and work towards developing policies and guidelines for when it is appropriate to use them and when which things don't belong containerized. For example, security libraries like OpenSSL or NSS should probably always remain pulled from the master system, and I personally think I agree with that. Yerwin?
With containers, however, and I distributed to 7 Linux distributions that I supported. With containers, however, I only need one image. Let's not forget that I ship rel 6 or rel 7 bits, or CentOS. And the customer, whether they prefer Ubuntu, LTS, or whatnot, not their problem anymore. It's not their choice to ship the application with whatever base platform they choose. So that makes stuff a lot easier.
Right. Right. So the summary is ISVs love containers because they can target whatever. Now, that being said, this is the Fedora Council session, not the Fedora container session. I think we already had 2 days of that. So, right, it came from the packaging committee. And, like I said, to start off this whole tangent, we have work to do there, I think.
Okay, so for FPC, just quick note, I would like to see more FPC to be working with the working groups. Actually, that was the idea behind establishing working groups. You are the guys who knows what are you doing and what's the best probably approach to do it. And we can't ask FPC to know everything and to be experts in that area. But of course, on the other hand, you have to avoid like the situations. Okay, we are a working group. We know everything, best, and all other, irrelevant, blah blah blah. So that it needs some balance between. But still, I think the more work should be on that working group part, and go to FPC with that this is what we like to see and try to explain them. And on the other hand, FPC should not have that firewall. Like everything is that's going outside, FPC is wrong. So we have to find a balance.
I just have one small comment about that too. Having sat on the Fedora packaging committee in the past, I think I'm hearing something that sounds like a misconception, in that the Fedora packaging committee does not make policy. No, they don't. That's FESCO. So if you don't like something, you need to go to them. So the packaging committee basically just says, if you want to package something sanely, here's our recommendation on how to do it. That's it. Now, as far as the bundling stuff goes, I'm more of a permissive guy too, and but I was in the minority there. But this is an excellent topic to, if it has to, escalate it to FESCO, and because it's ultimately their call to make policy decisions. That's all I was going to say.
I wanted to add one thing too. The other thing I think would be really kind of cool is if there was an aspect of the FPC. I don't know if it's the FPC itself or like an ancillary group or whatever, but there was actually more of an outreach group. So instead of it being kind of a much, kind of people coming to, this kind of goes back to the high barrier to entry part, right? Is that I think it'd be really cool if our most excellent people at doing packaging and people who understand the problems and everything else were actually reaching out to projects and reaching out to other organizations to try to bring them to Fedora, rather than being kind of a gate to getting in. Yeah, well, no, but as part of their mission, right? Like as an ambassador kind of role.
I think, ambassadors actually do that. Oh, sorry. I think a lot of our ambassadors actually already do that. But yeah, that's a great task, and it's a good idea.
So we've had several questions where the answer has been or has included, there's not necessarily one answer for everybody. Now that we have got editions well established and well received, what plans do we have for the other part of these early discussions, which was the rings side, which would exactly be one side does not recall part of the
looking at me for some reason.
Right.
I was asking if you wanted
You
to
wanna-
or you want me.
I think I'll try to summarize the question is that basically where are rings at and where are we going and who's working on that? Is that fair?
All right. So some of this hasn't been, unfortunately, as public as it should be. But we have been talking about in a variety of groups, where it might make sense to relax or strengthen certain aspects of the packaging rules. For example, we've talked about the possibility that we might make the packaging rules particularly strict, at least as strict as they are now, only for install media. The set of things that one of the spins or the additions have decided is part of the complete set that belongs to that release. And for that, we should keep up our extremely rigorous and and I would argue very valuable guidelines. But at the same time, there are plenty of packages out there in the fringes of Fedora. Tom's Django app and basically anything in Ruby. And I'm sorry. There are plenty of packages out there in the fringes that they're not core functionality to the system. They're very useful to end users, and perhaps it's reasonable to allow them allow people to just package stuff in. If they're in the packager group, just allow them to bring it in. We trust them. We've made them go through a couple of reviews already, and then if at some point it gets moved into the the release media, maybe we force the full complicated package review. So that's one thing I'm going to be moving forward on and trying to pitch to the council at large. So this is the first some of them are hearing of this, but that is one of my plans.
So I think in general this is a really big thing. I don't know if everybody here was at my talk this morning. I had one slide that I kind of breezed past, which was like some of the areas that doing a rings model touches, and it's basically everything in the distribution. And there are a lot of different ways things could go in a lot of different directions. And I think we just it's time to start painting some bike sheds and lining them up and see how they work. And we haven't really gotten to that yet, but a lot of people are kind of talking about all of the different parts, and so it's something that I would like to see a objective proposal for a chunk of it for the next year. And I've actually made a post to the Environments and Stacks mailing list as a one place to start. That's kind of a little bit of the beginning of that. Nobody replied to it, so I'll probably do that again once I'm back from DevConf, try to push that a little further. So I think I was talking to the release engineering people as well about choosing a section of Rawhide to actually gate on. So make sure that this, if you update this package and it breaks some testing in Rawhide, it has to wait. But we don't want to do that to all of Rawhide because that would be incredibly frustrating. We would never have a functioning Rawhide if we did that. So we need to choose some 300 packages to be. These are the ones we're going to. It's basically an extension of the existing critical path components that we have. So there's a lot of these different ideas, and they're kind of, I think, we need to have somebody to bring that together and start coordinating it. So Stephen, if it's you, then that's awesome.
I have one comment. I just want to ask you a question. So it sounds like we want to kind of come at this from two angles. One is we want to have like the core system be hard, and then we want the fringe stuff to be easy. Which would you prefer happened first, or would you rather it happen all at the same time, or?
Yes. Yeah, I guess I don't care.
Okay.
And there are a lot of different ways to do that.
I'd argue we have the hard already, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Well, he's suggested stuff that makes it even harder.
right.
Gating packages in. We're raising the bar now.
Well, on the other side, we also have coppers, which is very easy on the other side, but maybe too far out. So kind of bringing the copper stuff in and saying, this is the Fedora playground idea. Some of these things from coppers are readily accessible to people who haven't gone out of their way to dig into what a copper is and how to set it up. But just, I want this. enable crazy stuff in the software center. I know the UX designers hate that idea, but so it has to have a better UX than enable crazy stuff. But something that lets you more easily get to these things that we can show that we have a different promise for what this means. So that's the I think some of the we kind of have bits of that as well. So yeah, I don't care which happens first. Let's do it. Oh, Paul Friel. Ouch. No. So the question is, you guys up here are all just engineering thoughts, and all these questions are. Yeah. Right. No. So we've been focused on kind of engineering questions, and as a council, what are our thoughts about thought leadership and sort of other outreach things in Fedora, and are we waiting for Remy to come and do all of that stuff, or are we working on it? What is thought leadership, Paul?
So this is open source taking over the world. What's our plan to make that happen, rather than thought leadership? Because I think there is a lot of thought leadership on containerization stuff. That's
and it may not be, it may not necessarily be us trying to take the wheel as much as to do that.
right.
Yeah. So I guess the question is, what's our plan for world domination beyond just putting together a distribution, and how do we do that? I think. I don't know if this is quite big enough in scope, but one of the things I've been thinking about, and I'm going to talk to Remy about, and the ambassadors in general, is when we go to conferences right now, it is mostly who wants to go to what. Oh, I'm interested in that. Can I get funding for that? And then I'll go. And we don't have a very strategic view of what conferences we go to and why. And I think some of those things where it's somebody going to a local event, it costs them very little, a couple $100 to set up something. Those are still pretty valuable because it may only have very small regional impact, but it's a strong impact for the money. So those are still good. I think we still want to do those kind of things. There's other things that are big conferences like FOSDEM and LinuxCon that are kind of flagship Linux World events, and it has some value for us to have some kind of Fedora presence there, so that it's just a general reminder we're important and we are part of the world, obviously Fedora. And then there's kind of some things in the middle, which I think we haven't done, which is to say, this is not a Linux conference, this is a developers conference, and we want to bring Fedora to these developers and say, we're doing this cool stuff. We have this awesome new Fedora workstation that's targeted at you. You maybe never have had a Linux distribution at your conference before, but we're here because we've got this. Or some of the cloud conferences and DevOps-focused conferences where we may actually have solutions for people, but they would never have thought of us. So outreach in those kind of conferences is one of the things I think is important.
I'd like to add to that too. I've been talking with a number of people over the last 6 to 12 months about a few more other type of outreach programs similar. Basically, one thing I would really like for us and the ambassadors to focus on heavily are install fests during university orientation weeks. I would like for us to position Fedora. Sorry.
We actually did the install fest for orientation. It's actually just one thing. We actually did the same thing exactly on this university, thanks to Jiří, for all new, guys coming here. And they have a lot of programming classes and so on, but nobody helps them to set up. There's laptops to do it. Everything has to be done on Linux, you got your points going down if you're not doing it on Linux. So this is really great opportunity, and it was a great idea. Yeah, this was very same room, so we already started.
To summarize, there was a very good turnout at this very university for an install fest of Fedora, and there were many people who did so. So I think that's a really valuable thing that we should be pushing as many places as possible, because I think the story we want to tell is Fedora is the distribution you use when you want to get real work done, real engineering work, real development work. We want their first exposure, especially to freshmen going into college, that if you want to get it done, you're using Fedora. I think could go a long way towards expanding our user and contributor base.
So you're telling me every September-ish time frame I should expect this huge increase in bug reports?
Yes. Downloads.
If we do it right.
Yeah. Yeah, so to summarize, the developer set in Fedora and the ambassador side of things are really two disjoint sets of people that don't really talk to each other at the moment. You're absolutely right. And that's a problem that we've identified for a while now, and it's really on myself and Christoph, and the rest of the council as well, to work on that to improve the situation. Because, I mean, yeah, exactly. I'm on the development side. I have no idea what the ambassadors do, and shame on me for not knowing, right? So anything that we can do to improve communication across those boundaries within the project is going to help improve communication outside of the project as well. Yeah, that was a very good point.
And also representing the engineering side, I semi-regularly go to conferences and install fests and plug fests and things, but I'll fully admit that I do so without any coordination with the ambassadors, and on several occasions have stepped on their toes. So we do need to do better than that.
Well, it sounds like maybe I misunderstood, but it sounded like some of the other part of the question was sometimes you don't feel like you can properly represent the parts of Fedora that particular individual finds most interesting because it's deep tech for whatever reason. And so I guess it's kind of funny because the role I played at Red Hat before I went into engineering was a developer evangelist, right? And it sounds like the ambassadors need some developer evangelists. And maybe that's a way to start to pull that over and maybe do some of that bridging, is that we start to identify more of the engineers that are in Fedora, right, as kind of developer evangelists. Oh, sure. All right.
Right now I'm envisioning someone going, "You're installed!" You know?
Yeah, that's exactly what I did. All right. All right, so, I don't know. Yeah, something like that. Okay, developer evangelist is a role that's been identified. Maybe it's gotten really popular in the last 3 to 5 years. But it's basically on any successful development team, almost always, there's like one person on that team who like talks to all the people who are not on the team. you know, and so they go out and essentially evangelize for the application or the thing, whatever it is, as well as evangelism kind of, and then the other aspect of it is they also go and talk to people and they bring information back. And traditionally, that's just been one member of the team who didn't really have time to do it. And of varying quality, right, depending on the random set of engineers you happen to have. So the developer evangelism role has kind of started to be, why don't we actually explicitly create people who are the ones who are going to go and talk to developers about software in a way that developers can understand, right? So I can have a deep tech conversation with somebody, but I also kind of know all the marketing. Did I almost say fluff? Yeah, I almost said fluff. That the company is talking about, so that I can kind of make a connection for a developer about why it might actually be interesting. So that's an evangelist, and it sounds to me like perhaps the ambassadors could use, you know, kind of some evangelists, and maybe what it is to actually pull some people out of engineering and say, you know, we think you, and you should be ambassadors, so here's all the stuff you need to do, Josh, to actually, you know, join the ambassador program and know how to be an ambassador, right?
So I think the comment is that we have in the ambassador sort of a worldwide network of local experts, and that as a project we could be taking better advantage of that and what that brings to us. Oh yeah, and Paul would like 3 weeks in Spain. Yeah. So I think one of the other sort of big things here is that, you know, I talked about the council being more of a hierarchical thing than the previous board arrangement was, but I don't necessarily mean that. It doesn't mean that it's going to now be a top-down kind of thing. So the idea is still that, you know, the thought leadership. I hope that all of us on this council have some of that, but that it really still should come from the community at large, and that our job is to find those things and to make them, you know, bring focus to them and help them succeed. And so things like this idea of building stronger connections between the ambassador, the outreach side, and the engineering side, maybe that is something that we try to set up this structure for the council to make that work. So this may be something that is an objective in itself. So it's not an engineering objective, but it's a project structure objective, to not just make them one-time things, but to make it, you know, how can we forge some sort of permanent thing that makes that stronger in Fedora forever? And maybe that's an 18-month goal for the project, and that would be, I'd love to see that proposed.
I just would add, I mean, like, yeah, that's a brilliant idea, because I travel all the time, and actually having local knowledge is so awesome. And usually I just hit the ground, and if I'm lucky, I have some money. But, you know, from then on, I just kind of wing it. And, you know, it's really nice to have a handler, is the, you know, what I usually put it. But that was all.
We are technically out of time, though. I don't know if you guys want to stick around. If anybody else has more questions, I've got nothing planned this afternoon.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, there's free food, so. Oh. I thought you said cookies. I would call it, personally.
Yep.
Yeah. All right.
I'm going to do it. Oh,
Rex.
Last word.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Didn't want to break.